Welcome back to Close Up. Democrats are looking for candidates in the race for governor and an open seat race in the 1st Congressional District. One former elected official whose name has surfaced in regards to both of those contests is the 2022 Democratic nominee for governor, Dr. Tom Sherman. And the doctor is in. He's our guest this morning on Close Up. We appreciate you coming in.
Well, it's always a pleasure to make a house call.
There we go. All right. So take us through, Republicans in Washington hold power in the Congress, in the executive, and they hold power here in Concord. In the legislature and in the corner office. Right now, what is the development over the last 100 days that has you most motivated or fired up to get back into the public arena?
For me, it all comes down to people and health, and that means both physical health and fiscal health. And I think all of that is under threat. So that's what's got me fired up. Individual rights to being able to access health care when you need it, recognizing how that is such a driver of our economy. And then the economy itself, you saw the news that came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about the economy, national economy actually shrinking under Trump. But we also know that here in New Hampshire, the tariffs are having a terrible impact. At the same time, we have a legislature that is dealing with a self-inflicted budget crisis. I say self-inflicted because they've had control for the last 8 years under Sununu, and now under Kelly Ayotte, they have control still, and yet they're already dipping into the rainy day fund. They got $37 billion of funding from the federal government during COVID. Where is that? What's happened to the state where this proud state that is very fiscally responsible, no income tax, no sales tax, is suddenly in a position of almost bankruptcy and having to dip into rainy day funds? It is raining today, but it's not raining inside the State House.
Take us through your decision-making process. Like I said, your name pops up in a couple different regards here. How are you going to decide whether you want to run for governor or Congress?
Or anything.
Sorry, and option C. Yeah, right.
Not plug. Thank you for that. But the issue isn't really whether I'm going to run, because I honestly don't know yet. I'm keeping all of my options open. But it's whether I am the one that's needed to run. We have to win. We have to win back this state. And the reason we have to win back the state is because the state is changing irreversibly. You think of us as the live free or die state. You might, I do. That's our motto, right? No, we are now every man for himself state. And it's getting worse. When you look at live free or die, how do you live free when half of your population now has an abortion ban? How do you live free when people are attacking the civil rights? And this is in New Hampshire, in a state that used to be so proud for defending people's civil rights. How do you live free when you're putting an income tax on Medicaid recipients, the poorest people in the state? And Kelly Ayotte wants to put a 5% income tax on them to pay for Medicaid. These people are making $50,000 a year or less and have a family to raise. You have a family, a young family. I have a family. I can't imagine being able to afford housing, being able to afford anything, including food, if I then have to pay 5% of my income for my health care. That's just not how we build a strong state. Those people that we are doing that to are the people who work in our stores. They're the people our employers are really dying to hire. They have a great work ethic. They're New Hampshireites, and yet we're sticking it to them while we get rid of the interest and dividends tax and decrease the business profits tax. The business profits tax, 50% of the companies are out of state. Walmart, Amazon, Apple. So at a state level, we have the state government squeezing the people who can least afford it, driving us into bankruptcy. That's not fiscally responsible. That is not a solutions-based government. That's not a government that actually is really trying to help everyone in New Hampshire, the wealthy or the people who are facing poverty, succeed.
You talk about the need to win. Democrats are on a decade-long losing streak in the race for governor. You've seen this from the inside. What needs to change in order for Democrats to win?
We have to get back to the basics. You know, I'm a physician. I'm a doc. Number one guiding light has always been patient, not drug companies, nothing like that. Drug companies are sticking it to our patients, so we know that they're not the ones that we need to be beholden to. We need to make sure our patients get better. Same thing is true in New Hampshire for politicians. We need to pay attention to our constituents, not if they're Democrats, not if they're Republicans, all of them. That's what we need to do. We need to figure out a way to be able to hear them. I remember when I was on the campaign trail, I went all over the state and I loved it. It was a fantastic experience, but my best experience was going into diners. And, you know, whether it was up in the North Country or other parts of the state, that's where I met everybody. That's where I met Republicans, and I would sit down at the table if they let me. I would identify myself, I'd sit down at the table and just listen. And that's what we need to get back to doing. Because right now, we have people in government who have been elected. I just can't believe that my friends who are traditional Republicans, New Hampshire Republicans, you know, that huge swath of independents, I can't believe that if they knew what was happening in Concord, this would make them happy and they would say, yeah, that's the guy I voted for doing what I voted for.
Well, people are paying attention, you know, and one issue in particular that strikes me, you know, listening to voters, we look at this issue that motivated a lot of people in 2024 of, you know, the transgender rights and high school sports. You know, 80-20, 80% think it's not appropriate for a young man who is transitioning to female to compete against young women in sports, and yet Democrats view it the opposite. And not only that, if this is a dominant individual who wins, they should be celebrated. Do you think they should listen to the voters on that and reverse course?
I think you're talking about 5 people. In the New Hampshire public school system, there's 160,000 people. And we're deciding an election on 5 people, 5 kids? That's ridiculous. We should be deciding elections on housing, on jobs, on people who really, I mean, gosh, you know, I was out at a factory in Keene. And they could find people to hire, but they couldn't find housing for those people. They couldn't expand. That's the issue where we should be focusing, because people need basically 4 things. My wife tells me never to say that, so I'll try to remember all 4. But one is they need a solid public education. That's being targeted by the current leadership in Concord. They need housing. They need a job. And those things that they are doing in Concord are undermining all of those. Why are we paying attention? Whether we agree or disagree on these issues, you know, that's not what puts food on the table, which is the 4th one. We need food. People need to be able to go to work, earn a living wage, and actually be able to afford a house or an apartment and send their kids to great public schools.
Education freedom accounts. In 22, you said, you know what, I want to end this program, but let's grandfather in the kids who are there. Now, a lot of Democrats say, let's just throw the whole thing out. Have you changed your position?
No, I haven't. You know, this state needs to embrace our next generation, not try to destroy it. I was appalled that Sununu used his position as governor to bully 5 kids in the entire school system. Make them other, out them, get them in trouble, tell them they can't be a kid. Same thing's true with EFAs. I would phase it out. The number one thing that got us EFAs or vouchers in the first place was this sense of everybody should have a choice. 95% of the people who are in the program of vouchers never went to public schools. So it's not that they needed a choice, they'd already made their choice and they could already afford it. It's $25 million we can't afford going to less than, well, you've got 160,000 kids in the public school system and 20,000 kids who are in either private or homeschooled situation. It's a small fraction of the total number. But they are eating up a huge amount of resource for the vast majority of the kids. We need to focus on those kids. We need to make sure our public schools stay among the best. We were tied with Massachusetts for first in the nation under Sununu, when Sununu took office. We're now down around 5 or 6 in the nation and falling down. And by the way, we are last in the nation as a state for where young teachers want to come work. That's hurting our children. We've got to stop hurting our children.
All right, Dr. Tom Sherman, interested to see what comes next, and please keep us informed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Close Up. We'll be right back with the wealthiest elected official in America on whether the President of the United States should be able to issue their own cryptocurrency. Stay with us.